In the nearly 10-year decline of Kenya Airways, few decisions have had as big an impact on the airline's profitability as the choices it made on fuel hedging.
Hedging is an excellent thing, but you have to do it prudently. It's like a bet, so that you don't burn.
They needed to play to the market dynamics at that time.
The fuel issue has become a big nightmare for KQ. It contributes 20-25% to their losses on the lower side.
It was a miscalculated decision by somebody who did not know what he was doing.
Fuel hedging has been a major contributor to Kenya Airways' loss-making trend. For instance, 2009 is when the airline made its first loss since its privatization in 1996, mostly attributed to fuel hedging. In 2015, Kenya Airways lost 7.4 billion shillings to fuel hedging contracts. In 2016, they lost 4.1 billion. To mitigate the risk of a volatile oil market, airlines across the world always use fuel hedging, which is when an airline agrees to purchase oil in future at a predetermined price. This can be an advantage in case jet fuel prices go up, but it can also affect the airline negatively in case the prices go down. KQ has seen both ends of this, as it reported in 2012 and 2014 that it made gains on fuel hedging.
Hedging, when you hedge, you buy when the fuel prices are high, and with experience, because you look at the trends. You don't hedge for a very long time. You hedge for short periods. It's like a bet, so that you don't burn. KQ hedged for a very long time and at the wrong time. So it was a miscalculated decision by somebody who did not know what he was doing.
The fuel issue has become a big nightmare for KQ, and I think it contributes 20-25% to their losses on the lower side. For me, I think that's where the biggest waterloo is. If they can fix just that issue of fuel, because at some time you look at the amount they're buying the fuel at, and even there's an association of African airlines that we looked at their prices, they are far much cheaper. So you wonder, why don't you get into an alliance of fuel buyers that are actually tried and tested, buyers are pool and work. You want to go it alone and you are not able to get the same prices that the others are getting.
Another high cost that Kenya Airways has been incurring over the years is its central reservation system and frequent flyer program. The airline had an agreement with KLM as their general sales agent in Europe.
The KQ reservation system is actually cost KQ 6% of its turnover. When you take 6% of KQ turnover, we're talking around about 8 billion shillings. Now, if you look at what Ethiopian Airlines pays for CRS, CRS is when you do a booking, you own a system, a reservation system. You find that Ethiopian Airlines don't spend more than 2.5% in reservation system. Now, straight away again, there's a 4% saving.
Normally, the distribution system, sales distribution system is expensive for airline. Okay, there are few, because of the complexity, there are few people who offer this kind of service to airline business. So in our case, the distribution system is supplied by Amadeus. And frequent flyer program is important for the airline. It's important because you want to make sure that the people who fly you want to fly you next time. In aviation, people enjoy your product and give you feedback instantly. Okay, and it's an expensive product. For everybody, because aviation is flying from one place to another is expensive. So you want to make sure that you're keeping tabs to the people who are flying you, so that they continue flying you. Okay, so it's a customer retention methodology that we use, the frequent flyer program. Okay, so that if you fly us once, you continue flying us. So it's an important one.
Another high cost to the company is its maintenance cost. Kenya Airways outsources these services from Etihad Airways Engineering and Jordan Aircraft Maintenance Limited, or Joramco for short.
In fact, that is one of the worst decisions that was made. Kenya Airways has a capability of doing all the maintenance on the aircraft. So what Kenya Airways did is, because of selfish interests, Somebody wants to outsource to his fellow friends abroad, they fire the engineers. There are certain maintenance which are called light maintenance. They are called HX. HX are line maintenance checks. They take between 3 hours to 6 hours and they can be comfortably done in-house. So a case in place is, for example, where they are outsourcing the 787 for HX to Etihad and to Joram Company in Jordan at an exorbitant cost. The fixed cost was about $40,000 to $50,000, not factoring in the fact that the aircraft would have to be flown from Nairobi to Etihad to Jordan, going without passengers, so that is fuel. It has pilots that are going to sleep in the hotel. There are charges at the airport called handling charges. That's going to spend money. The aircraft is going to stay there for like 2 to 3 days, because like for this case, for the HX, they quoted that it will need 2 days. Each day the aircraft is out of service is a loss because this aircraft could have flown to generate money. Okay, and the cost again. So why do you keep the engineers out so that you can outsource the maintenance and even the sourcing process? Top management just go and pick Etihad. They go and pick Jordan. They pick everywhere. There is no competitive bidding.
When they were purchasing the Boeing 787 fleet, Kenya Airways invested millions in tools and equipment to facilitate the heavy C-check maintenance for their fleet. However,
after spending millions and millions and getting approval from the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority to be able to do the maintenance in-house, the top management decides that we are taking the aircraft. We are not going to do the C-checks in Nairobi. Now, against the advice of the planning department and the maintenance section, but the then technical director and the CEO, because of vested interest, decides to rubbish everything and say no, we are taking the aircraft for maintenance outside, which is very costly. The tools and equipment are rotting in the store.
In June 2017, Kenya Airways board appointed Sebastian Mikosh as the CEO of the company. Mikosh had overseen the turnaround of Poland's flag carrier, Lot Polish Airlines.
Sebastian, I would say, yes, another flop. At least he had a bit of experience in terms of aviation. However, so at least he was somebody who understood the aviation business and model. So on that bit, yes, he had the right ingredients and he understood at least the aviation business to some extent. The problem is that even he came with a team of 5 Polish consultants.
I have noticed the article this morning about the Polish team, so I feel very relaxed about it. So let me just share with you that first of all, it's a team of people that was with me on board in Lot turning around the airline. The reason why they came is exactly because I showed them, look guys, we have the same almost patterns, similarities. This is what I need from your expertise. They came here for 3 months, okay? I don't know if they're gonna stay or not stay.
Stay or not stay, the Polish consultants did stay, and in a document seen by Africa Uncensored, the team allegedly drew salaries of between 3.6 million shillings and 5.4 million shillings a month.
So he is someone coming to a company that has no cash, a company that is begging the government to give them handouts, and he can still afford to bring in 6 expatriates, earning huge salaries and doing nothing. Because even if you ask what did we achieve from these expatriates, you get nothing. And even if we indeed needed consultants, we have got so many locally available here. In fact, Kenya Airways does not need consultants. The previous staff who are actually outside the gate are even better consultants.
In this email from the then acting Chief Human Resources Officer to Procurement Department staff, Mikosh became in charge of all procurement in December of 2018. The email reads in part, effective immediately, supply chain's reporting structure shall change and shall now be under the responsibility of the Group Managing Director and CEO. It continues, please therefore ensure that all approvals from your teams requiring director or chief approvals and all processes requiring the appointment or award of tenders or contracts are also signed off by the CEO before implementation.
When you have an area whereby, because this supply chain talks about anything, procurement, logistics, facilities, you know that where you can get. From maintenance, whether it would be for aircrafts, whatever it is, these tenders and all these approvals, it is where money is made. For me, when I look at this, when you have a supply chain report structure coming under the Group Managing Director CEO, This is a change. It is an instruction. It clearly shows vested interests.
During his time at Kenya Airways, Mikosh had bodyguards whose annual expense was over 10 million shillings. In this invoice from security firm Salama Fikira, the 2 bodyguards or close protection officers, as described here, cost $8,954, which is approximately over 900,000 shillings. In the month of May 2018, Mikosh security cost Kenya Airways 1.1 million shillings.
Nobody knows how Salama Fikira was tendered. In fact, Sebastian, having become the procurement boss himself, went and assigned himself 2 bodyguards to be walking around with him. Never in the history of KQ have we seen a director or CEO walk around with bodyguards, which he sources himself and pays 1 million per month, paid to bodyguards. I don't know how to put it. Sebastian as the CEO is sourcing and assigning himself bodyguards at the expense of the company money.
Maurice, unfortunately, you're asking me very difficult questions because, first of all, I wasn't here. I was not able to assess the need. I have not done any investigation to determine whether or not the bodyguards were necessary. And quite honestly, for example, I am not even aware that he had 2 bodyguards. So I cannot answer that question because I didn't check to find out why he had 2 bodyguards, if he did, and whether there was a threat to his life and so on and so forth. What I can tell you is that I don't have bodyguards. That's what I know.
Sebastian Mikosh resigned for personal reasons in December 2019 after 2 years as a CEO of Kenya Airways. However, he was given a total of 91.9 million shillings as an exit package for leaving office before his time. Even though he was hired with hopes that he would turn around the national carrier, KQ incurred a total loss of 20.4 billion shillings during his tenure.
Yeah, well, I didn't make that decision. So first, I didn't make a decision for him to leave. And secondly, that's a board decision. I wasn't here, like you said rightly. So that's a decision that you will need to refer to the board.
KQ board chair Michael Joseph responded to this, saying, and quote, "This is confidential, but I can only state that the exit package was in the terms of his contract." End quote. In 2018's annual report, under the related party transactions, they reported that 54 million shillings is due from directors. According to our sources, this amount was occasioned by Sebastian Mikosh and Michael Joseph, the chair of the board, adding their salaries allegedly without board approval. Mikosh adding his salary and allowances from 62 million to 96 million, while Michael Joseph doubling his fees and allowances from 18 million to 36 million shillings.
That money had not gone through a board approval. The board itself, I think, had a stormy meeting, and out of that he was told that cannot happen. He was forced to return that money.
In this March 2019 voucher, Michael Joseph paid Kenya Airways 12.6 million shillings, which is the equivalent of the 18 million that he owed minus a 30% tax. So what role does the board play in all of these?
One wonders where the board was really seeing these malpractices. In fact, the only conclusion you can draw is that the board was actually part of this rot, or that the board was never competent enough.
A board should have an oversight role. The board should comprise of the people with the credentials, the qualifications, the expertise to run an aviation airline. As we speak right now, that board is dead. From what we get to hear from sources, only 2 people are running that show.
We asked Michael Joseph about the salary increment claim for both himself and Sebastian Mikosh and about the details of the payment voucher. He said he was not able to comment on both questions. He, however, noted that the 54 million shillings due from directors, as captured in the 2018 annual report, was a timing issue. His statement reads, and quote, "We changed our year end from March to December during 2018. As a result, some amounts that were deemed to be owing to the company by the auditors at the time of closing of the accounts were subsequently reversed in the following year. You can verify this for yourself in the subsequent annual reports." True to his statement, in 2019 reports, nothing is due from directors.
The board had a hands-off approach from what was happening in KQ. And there's one thing that even until today is very flawed in KQ. airlines are supposed to have aviation personnel in their boats. Kenya government does not appoint, if you look at the profiles of people on the board, people who are in the business. Now, it is the board that's supposed to do due diligence. I accept they may have, they do have the intellectual capability, but they're not honed in the business. Now, a project of that scale requires a board which doesn't even exist today, people in aviation. And if you look at good practice right across the world, if you go to British Airways, go to KLM, what do? They have the aviation gurus, retired staff who excelled, still on the board.
Currently, Parliament is debating the 2020 National Aviation Management Bill, which seeks to have the government take full ownership of Kenya Airways. Currently, the government owns 48.9% and is expected to buy out the remaining holders of the 51.1% of the shares and form the Kenya Aviation Corporation Company to run the airline and the Kenya Airports Authority. The renationalization elicited mixed reactions from experts.
The government does this on the basis that there's a general assumption that Kenya Airways is a strategic asset, right? It's not a strategic asset, by the way. And the government can actually let Kenya Airways fail without having a flinch. There's no evidence that nationalizing Kenya Airways would improve its business fundamentals, right? And as a matter of fact, I'm very worried that Kenya Airways become one of the bureaucracies that's part of the state.
What is ailing Kenya Airways is not because it is not nationalized. Kenya Airways is not ailing because it is private. Kenya Airways is ailing because of mismanagement. Everybody who comes in wants to eat. So you must first fix Kenya Airways by fixing its structures. Fix the people. The major problem in Kenya Airways is the people. You cannot have key areas being run by people who are not competent. The current status of Kenya Airways, even if you nationalize it right now, you're not going to achieve much. Get the right people, starting from the board.
KQ cannot exist as an entity as it is. There are too many strings. I would suggest simple. KQ should be closed down as it is. And a new entity restarted, which has the obligations. There are too many people, too many entities, interests holding KQ at ransom. You need to restart, recapitalize. Get the right technical people in the airline, because you can't keep on throwing money, billions. We've been throwing it over the last 4 or 5 years, over 100 billion shillings. It can't work.
One of the downsides is, now you have to recreate the brand, okay? Again, setting up an airline is no easy feat. The amount of agreements, okay, so I'll give you an example. So, before we went into this pandemic, we are flying 56 destinations. That means that we have to have 56, what we call it bilateral air service agreements, okay, with 56 countries. We have to have people in those 56 countries. We have to create traffic in those 56 countries. So by shutting down, it means that you have to build that up again. And it has taken us over 40 years to do that. So you can imagine doing that again. But on the other hand, it does have its own merits, because you also need to think about, okay, financially, will it make more sense to do that? Will we help address some of the historical problems that we've had? So I can sympathize with the people who think that, but I caution that there are also some downsides to it.
Where KQ missed out is on the service. So moving to be nationalized or otherwise is not going to help. Nobody flies on an airline because it's a national airline. That's not the decision I make when I want to fly. Are they on time? Are they affordable? How are their services?
And just simply nationalizing without first correcting the problems in KQ, will it change? In there, we have a lot of people who are incompetent. Most of the brains behind the airline have left. So definitely, there is needs for intellectual capital in there. Not just money. You can't keep on throwing money. It won't change. So there's a lot to be done.
Questionable procurement of assets and services, as well as the steady drip of low-level pilferage. Turning the fortunes of the soon-to-be nationalized airline will be a tall order for the government and its new leadership. Will they be up to the task? Or will the airline's many problems be too much of a challenge? One thing is for certain. As the new owners of the national carrier, Kenya's 50 million citizens must watch it closely.